Hey, I'm Scott Snyder, and you're listening to the Nerd Rage Renegades.
Nerd Rage Renegades.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Nerd Rage Renegades episode 30. This is the one, the blockbuster, the main event, the interview to end all interviews is right here tonight. With me right now is Chief and Panda. Oh my lordy lord, what an interview we got installed.
Yeah, man, that was what a revealing interview.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't expect him to hang out for as long as he did, but man, he's a very, very cool guy.
What you're about to hear in just a few minutes is our interview with the one and only Scott Snyder. Now, for those of you who live under a rock or maybe not into the whole comic book scene and you listen to us for our movies, bitching and complaining, Scott Snyder is the writer of DC books, Batman, Batman Eternal. He has Swamp Thing. He's written Superman Unchained. He's got his books, American Vampire, Wytches, over an Image and Vertigo. Just really a fantastic writer and a really good guy. And we've been working on this interview for months. Chief was getting like constant updates from me, monthly, weekly, daily on this interview.
Yeah, man, and I was asking every day, what's going on? What's going on with Scott Snyder? Did he email you back yet?
We finally locked it down. We brought Panda in for this interview, and most of our interviews run 45 minutes to an hour, depending on the guest. This one went 3 hours.
Yeah, he's got a lot to say.
Yeah, this wasn't that we were bombarding him with lots of questions. It was he just had a lot to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, and just so everybody knows, like the way, if anybody's listening to us for the first time, the way that we kind of do things here is we don't really have any set list of questions. We just had him on, and we just went where the conversation was going, and it went, man. He went on for a while. And that's fantastic. I couldn't believe it. What luck.
You're going to hear things in this interview. Let me paraphrase this. This is the first part of a 2-part interview. It was so long, so much stuff. I did not want to cut a single thing. I didn't want to shortchange anything, so we actually decided on the air, and I think you'll probably hear it a few times as we're talking in the interview. I say I'm going to cut this into 2 episodes. This is just there was so much that we had to make 2 episodes. So part 1 is this week, part 2 will be next week. But you're going to hear things in this interview that I don't think any other podcast, media outlet, those so-called big comic sites have ever gotten or heard from Scott.
And if they have, then we don't know about it. So
Yeah.
Yeah, he really doesn't do a ton of interviews, so
But he did one with us, so
Fantastic.
we don't want to waste any time with this. So, ladies and gentlemen, please, here we are with our interview with the one and the only Scott Snyder.
Plans, plans, plans. They always have their plans. But the problem with their plan is that when you take an insane person to the asylum, you're just taking him home. The very place he knows best.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, joining us now on the Nerd Rage Renegades, you may know him from books such as Wytches, American Vampire, Swamp Thing, or maybe this little book, it's underground, nobody's ever heard of it, I don't think it's got a lot of traction, called Batman. I don't think this book has ever really went anywhere, Chief. I think it's still...
What?
From DC, the one and only Scott Snyder. Sir, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
No, thanks for having me, man. I've been looking forward to it.
You are one of the most busiest men in comics, I would have to say, with everything that you've got going on.
Busiest.
Yeah, no, it's a lot, but it's all stuff that I love doing, so it's a good busy.
So quite a few books out currently that you've got your name on. American Vampire with its new story arc is out.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Wytches, which is your newest one with Jock doing the art, which is fantastic. And I think I saw a tweet. I think I saw a tweet you put up about you've already got the sales figures for issue 5.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Image gives us the FOC, the final order cutoff for each one, and it's a series that I think both of us thought was going to do really small numbers. I mean, for me, it's a pretty intensely personal horror story, and it's so much about, for me at least, the guilt and fear and anger sometimes of being a parent, that I just didn't think it would have a big audience, which was fine. But I figured that at least it would be something that the two of us could work on in a way that would be completely unfettered and that would be, would be true for us. And so I thought it would sell, I don't know. I mean, I really thought it would sell a lot less than it has. So it's been extremely exciting to see it do as well as it has, and not for the sales or the financial aspect of it, but just to know that the comic audience is that diverse and that supportive, I think, of books that you're passionate about, even when they're not necessarily an easy read, I guess, or a fun read. I mean, I thought that I didn't know there was such a big audience for, I guess, for a book that was so dark. So it means a lot. You see it and you realize that it's not just one kind of growing audience or one growing readership. It's a incredibly, plural and robust and diverse growing reading audience. I mean, in terms of tastes, just in terms of the taste is incredibly incredibly elastic. So it meant a lot to see, because it made me feel like there's nowhere any of us can't go and have readers follow us enthusiastically if they enjoy our work.
Well, one of the things that I really liked about Wytches is I think in age, I think you and I are around the same age. I'm 39 right now. I'll be 40 this year. But I mean, I think for me, it's like a generational thing. I remember running through the woods with my friends doing the same kind of stuff that you talk about at the end of that, and I really connected with it, like on that kind of level, and then kind of what scares me. And what I want to know is, like, you talk a little bit about how your taste in horror has evolved since you were a kid. Like, you got your first taste of it with a Stephen King novel. And I wanted to know how has your taste in horror evolved into adulthood, and what is it like to admire Stephen King, get into Stephen King's work, and then be able to work with him later on as an adult when you get into the business?
It's a huge thrill to get to work with him. I mean, it was one of the highlights of my life. But My taste, I think, I don't know that it's evolved that much. I mean, in the way that I've always gravitated towards certain kind of horror, a certain kind of horror, and for me, that's always been the really psychological and bleak, bleak horror. I mean, the thing I think I don't remember if I wrote about this in Witches or if I've just said it before, but the movie that really caught me off guard as a kid was Night of the Living Dead. That's my favorite horror movie. And
I agree, mine too.
yeah, well, the thing is, like, and I've joked about this before, but there was a video store where I grew up in New York, in 26th Street, that would rent R-rated. They wouldn't rent R-rated horror movies to kids, but they would deliver them if you ordered them. And so all of us in the neighborhood, we would get all the slasher movies and everything, like Faces of Death, and Traces of Death, the other one, like the worst one. And so we were all kind of completely saturated with horror, as kids before we were ready for it. And I loved, from Pumpkinhead to Sleepaway Camp 2, anything horror I loved. But then I got Night of the Living Dead, and I was so disappointed because it was black and white. I was like, this is going to suck. And it didn't scare me in the way, like, shock scare me, but the bleakness of that movie and the fact that it was so nobody escapes that you think is going to escape. The young couple is burned and eaten alive. The daughter, turns into a zombie and kills her parents. Everything was just so dark and then poignant at the end when you realize that, it all could have been avoided if they could band together and have been more supportive of one another. That movie to me really set my taste I think that still stands as a big touchstone for me. Like Pet Sematary is my very favorite Stephen King book, and I think the scariest book of all time. It's similar in that way, where I feel like the horror in those stories isn't necessarily the monster. The monster is scary, but it's scarier to see how blackly we can act or how darkly we behave when there's the opportunity to in the face of something that is terrifying. Like the Pet Sematary is scary, but it's scarier because we use it out of this unwillingness to let go of the people that we love. Or similarly, all the zombie films. So my taste, I'm trying to think of if there's anything that surprised me or caught me off guard recently. I mean, my favorite movies have been Let the Right One In, The Descent. I thought was really, I'm trying to think in the last 10 years of movies that really really impressed me horror wise, or books. But no, my taste has been pretty consistent. I think I just I run towards pretty pretty black horror, I guess. My five favorites are always like Night of the Living Dead, Shining, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Birds, just really those movies that I think are punishing in some ways. You watch and they just really, they don't let up, and not for gore or sort of sensational reasons, but because it's like an endless nightmare you can't get out of, no matter what you do. It's just because it just keeps cycling you back through, I guess. Sorry, I feel like I have to warn. I give like I'm really, I always feel like I definitely give corn maze like answers where I feel like I can talk forever about this stuff. So just cut me off at any point.
Believe it or not, I get what you're saying there.
Yeah,
actually,
okay.
2 or 3 of those movies are on my all-time favorite list, and I think you're right in that it's more about what those movies represent. Almost after what happens to these characters after the movie's over. The bleakness of some of those are. And especially like Texas Chainsaw Massacre is such they don't really even show you anything in that movie, but I mean it's just so horrific of what your imagination does in that, and it's filmed like somebody's psychotic home movie, and it's
and the soundtrack, all the the thing that scared me to death about that movie was its relentlessness. Also, the way that every time you think she gets away, she gets dragged back to that house, and the cruelty of those characters. How they're like, "Hit her, Grandpa! You can do it, Grandpa!" With the hammer, when he's like, "You can still do it! You can brain her." The mercilessness of that one really got me. When I was a kid, and still does. I mean, and it has this really primal, like, I don't know. I love that movie because it feels like it's sort of like you forgot about home and you forgot about your family, and